Alright guys, a quick tip here for advanced audio production, and really even probably could have put this in the 30-day power production course. Let's say you have a session and basically it looks nothing like this one. Your tracks are loaded up, you've got a ton going on, and your CPU is not doing so good. It's getting choppy, it's cutting out, you're having a hard time. Well, what you can do is you can take something that you have that's MIDI, and you can resample it. And by resampling it, you can basically get rid of your MIDI track and get rid of the instance of Nexus or Serum or Massive or whatever, Spire, Silent. And now you've just started to begin the process of saving on CPU. Now doing that once might work and do the trick. You might need to do that to multiple things depending on how big your session is. Aside from using it for that technique, which is basically CPU saving, you can also do this for other things like travel purposes. Let's say that on your tower, your gaming tower, your production tower that you keep in your house, which obviously you're not going to travel with, you've got all your big boy stuff, or big girl stuff. You've got Nexus, Silent, Serum, you've got everything that you need to make full-blown productions. But maybe you don't have a high-tech, latest, greatest, up-to-date laptop, but you do have a laptop that can handle production that you travel with. So maybe for that, similar to me, there's certain things that you have on your laptop that you do not have on your tower for just obvious storage and CPU power reasons. So what you can do is you can resample a bunch of things that you know you're going to use, put them in a folder, and then keep that on your laptop so that if you find yourself waiting for a bus or in a coffee shop or on a plane or wherever you may be with some time on your hands, you can at least open up your laptop and have all your signature sounds at your disposal, so that way you can at the very least begin the process of sketching out the skeleton, the bare bones of a track that you actually like, that you can hear coming together as your own because you are using your signature sounds, and something that you're actually going to be motivated to open back up and complete at a later time. And if you're not using your sounds, that becomes a little bit more difficult because it's harder to see the vision with just a bunch of sounds that you can't really relate to, that aren't really yours. So regardless of how you're going to use this, basically resampling. So just to start, I have a MIDI track here. I dragged Nexus onto my MIDI track. I created a MIDI clip, and all I did was put an 8th note C3 on there. So basically drag Nexus on, highlight, Control Shift M, and then where's C3? There you go. And I believe that should be an 8th. Yeah. Okay, so instead of having this Nexus instance on here, which is going to be a lot more CPU taxing than an audio recording of what you have, we insert an audio track, change it to resampling, we arm it, we hit record, and now we have basically two different copies, if you will, of the same thing. We have the original MIDI, which is Nexus quite literally playing that note, that C3, up here, which is what we're going to hear right now. And then what we also have is the audio recording of that Nexus synth playing C3, which is what we're going to hear right now. The difference is the first one, track 1 here, Nexus, is a lot more CPU taxing than the audio recording of it. The reason being is because this is just an audio recording. Number one has this actual instance, this soft synth known as Nexus, on the track. And as a result, more CPU is used. So imagine if you deleted that Nexus and now you've got your bass line here. You went down to your leads, resampled them, got rid of that Nexus, your lead Nexus. Now you have your bass line and your leads, and you just went down the line, and every single instance of Serum, Nexus, Massive, Silent, Serum, every and anything you just converted to audio. Now you can do this for one-shot samples like I did here, or you can do this for full-on patterns. You could take stems, or you could take full-on bass lines that are 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes long and resample those. Now, like I said, you can use this to save on CPU. You can also use this if you have kind of a second-rate laptop that you travel with, that you wouldn't really cry over if it got stolen or something. Maybe, that's a situation that you're in. You can have a folder of your sounds on that laptop, so that way you can always, at the very least, produce something. Maybe you have all of your drums resampled onto one track as a drum loop, and you have, let's say you make house, you've got your signature drums instead of tracking them out, so kick, clap, hi-hat, snare, whatever, bongo, hi-hat number 2, hi-hat number 3, all of those get routed into a resampling audio track, and now you've got a well-mixed loop of all of your drums. Now you just saved yourself 5 or 6, maybe even more than that, 10 tracks worth of drums in your Ableton session. So if you're at a cafe waiting for your ride, you can drag and drop that drum loop into Ableton, drag and drop your signature bass sound into Ableton, drag and drop, like for me, my signature steel drum sound into Ableton, and with drums, bass, and steel drums, I can basically get a pretty strong foundation going for a new track. And then when I get it home, if I really need to, I really probably shouldn't even really need to do this, but I could replace the drums, but I really probably shouldn't need to if they're all my signature drum sounds and they're all mixed to my liking, and I'm going to essentially keep them basically that way anyways throughout the track. Depending on how the kick and the bass interact, I could probably keep that drum loop intact, build out my patterns of my bass, build out my patterns of my lead, add a vocal, delete certain parts here and there to create, dynamics in the track. That is to say, delete certain parts, and when you delete certain parts, like namely the drums, you create a breakdown, and then bring certain parts back in, like the drums, to create a drop, and delete certain parts like, I don't know, the leads and the bass line, which would create basically an intro and an outro, and you have a pretty good making for one of your tracks. Don't forget too, guys, that you might look at this and say, what the heck could I really even do with a one-shot sample of a bass like this? Well, think about it. This is a sample just like a kick drum is a sample. This is a sample just like an audio recording of a vocal. So you could go into instruments, you could drag and drop a sampler, you could take your sample and drag and drop that into sampler. Let's shut off our original audio recording because we'll just focus on our sampler one, which let's rename it sampler so you don't get lost here. And basically, we'll set up a loop right here. Control Shift M. Now, because you know that's on C3, which is right here, you could basically put that on C2 if you wanted it a little bit deeper, which to me might be a little too deep. So, and hammer out a pattern for a bass line. And I'll just kind of create some kind of ridiculous no-name pattern right now. Um, well, that's far too. I didn't realize I was on 64th, but I think you're starting to see the idea here. Okay, so you can see from this one recorded sample, and if we loop that, Control L, we now have a nice Nexus bass sample that we were able to hammer out a pattern from. And the cool thing is, because we know that's on C3, I haven't done it this way in a while because thank God I just am no longer in a position where I need to worry about CPU power. But there was a time where I couldn't afford, $1,000 laptop, so I had to get creative on stuff like this. And guys, there's no shame in that. Sometimes the more complicated things get, the more you wish you could go back to simpler ways. And it's funny how a lot of times I have returned to a simpler way. Now the cool thing is, because I know this is C, the original recording is C, just to be safe, I lifted it up to, whoops, a G, as you can see right here, G2. Okay, and then I tested it by dragging a tuner onto that track, and it should show me G, which it just did. Cool. So if I want to change the key of that recording, that one-shot bass sample, all I have to do is shift the notes. And that's exactly what I did. Not the most exciting bass line in the world, but it's just an example to show you that you can do a heck of a lot with just one-shot samples. While we're on the topic of that, you don't have to necessarily buy Nexus or Serum or Silent and begin to make your own sample library, although I think that's pretty cool to do. Like, that's how I really started to get my own signature sound, which was by sampling steel drums when I lived in Key West in Miami. And that's what gave me the idea. But now, you don't have to necessarily do what I do and follow my footsteps. What you could do is go into Sennheiser, which is a company that's been around for a very long time. And let's just say you make, it doesn't look like they have a future bass section. It's probably under trap. No, maybe not. Maybe it's under dubby steppy. Let's just go for house. And I'll see you. Have a good day, okay? Any of these, I mean, you can just pick your poison, but any of these, Sennheiser is all samples. So if you look at this, usually it'll say BPM range with noted loops containing the key. Containing key information within the file name. And usually it'll show you, yeah, here we go, Moog basses, which is great. So you have bass lines, obviously you have drums, you have FM synthesis. Now a lot of this is pertaining to a style of sound from the 80s, but my point is, when you go to buy sample packs, it's not just about the drum samples, guys. This is a really great way to be a producer that is 100% synthesizer free. This is a great way to be a producer if you cannot stand sound design. If you don't want to mess with sound design, you don't have to. In fact, from my school of thought, I don't recommend it. It's a time eater, and it's where a lot of people get stuck instead of completing their track. Because keep in mind, guys, that if you drag this into sampler like I did here, there's a volume envelope right here. You don't need a synthesizer to produce sounds for you so that you can adjust the sound. If we just listen, if I adjust the envelope here, I should hear some differences. You can hear right there that the volume, it fades in now as opposed to being sharp. Here's sharp. So da, 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 very sharp, very attacky. When you fade it in, it should go wah, 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 wah. It fades in. Right? And now, what if we make the back end longer, the release? You can hear now how the notes are bleeding together. Wah, 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 wah. There's no space in between them. In fact, there's even a little bit of overlap. Now, what if we kill the release and there's none? You can hear it's a very choppy sound. Wah, 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 wah. Now, I'm over exaggerating it because I want to show you there's space at the end of the notes because there's no release. They're not bleeding into each other. So, and I'm not going to go over everything that's here, guys, but I'll just say that the sampler, whether it be in Ableton or FL or whatever DAW of choice you have, there is so much crazy stuff that you can do with a sampler and a basic sample, whether it be a vocal, a lead, a bass, a drum. You can do a lot with it. So don't get upset if when you go to Nexus and you see $250 for the starter pack, which by the way is more than enough. I was able to make basic house, basic techno, basic trance, and it sounded pretty darn good for $250. I mean, it's not like Nexus cheats you. They give you a lot of sounds for $250. In fact, it looks like over $2,750. And like I said, back in my trance days, I shouldn't have said basic. I was able to make a normal, full production, good, uplifting trance track. Tech trance, techno, um, EDM for lack of a better way of putting it, big room, progressive. Um, it did come with, I think, future bass sounds, so that classic kind of funky, clucky future bass line. That came with it, so I was able to make future bass pretty much right off the bat. Bass house as well. I don't know if it came with a lot of dubstep like LFO style growls, bassline growls, and like metallic bassline sounds. Um, but that's okay because you just go into their expansions and you pay $60 and you pick up a dubstep pack, so no big deal. But if you don't want to pay $250 for this and need to pay $60 for dubstep sounds or whatever specific sounds you're looking for, like I don't think the starter pack comes with future bass sounds either, or many, so you have to buy an expansion at $60. Keep in mind, Vengeance or Sennheiser negates the need for Nexus. Totally negates the need for Nexus. The Vengeance stuff, their website, I think sometimes looks a little bit off-putting, but their sounds are industry standard. So, I mean, if you're in doubt, go to Sennheiser or go to Vengeance, and you'll be able to find. I know that they have it. I'm sure they have a dubstep. Yeah, there you go. Essential dubstep right there. Now, here's the thing. Let's look at it. Let's go like we're going to buy it. Okay, so that's the thing right there. This is $75. And I don't quite know what download protection is, but then you're at $81. So if you're going to pay nearly $100 for that, keep in mind that for $150 more, you could just buy Nexus with over 2,000 presets. I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying consider your CPU. Your CPU is definitely going to be much healthier, and you'll save yourself CPU by using samples. Let's just get that straight right off the bat. However, if CPU is not so much of an issue, or you don't anticipate it being an issue for the rest of time, which it won't be because you'll save money, you'll get a better job, and you'll be able to afford a better laptop. Um, keep in mind if you're going to spend 81, that's almost 100. You may as well spend 250 and go for Nexus and get a little bit more of an exposure to sound design and synthesis, working, turning knobs, and things of that nature. Now, you don't need that. Don't feel guilty if you have no desire to sound design. Don't feel guilty if you have no desire to turn knobs on a synthesizer. Once again, guys, I know this is super like faux pas, but like that's not what this is about. It's about completing a track. And Vengeance samples are a tool to do that. They're a professional, industry standards tool. To deny Vengeance, to deny Sennheiser, is to deny yourself a tool in your tool room, in your toolbox, to make professional sounding quality tracks. There's a reason why Sennheiser has been in the game for as long as they have, and there's a reason why Vengeance has been in the game for as long as they have. Messing with sound design is admirable. Having every single sound under the sun is admirable, or having a synth that can make any sound under the sun is admirable, but it's also a time eater. It will rip the time from your life like you wouldn't believe. So if I were you, if CPU is an issue, or patience is an issue, or finishing a track is an issue, like it is for like 90% of people out there, get yourself some good samples, sample packs, and run with those. Then get yourself something like Nexus that does a lot of the work for you and run with that. At the end of the day, you're going to look back in a year or 3 or 5 and realize you have a little bit of both. I have Vengeance, I have Sennheiser, I have Serum, I have Nexus, I have Silent, I have Spire, I have Massive. Now you don't need all of that. Really all I need is a few Vengeance sound packs and I'm good. Or a few Sennheiser sound packs and I'm good. I don't think that Sennheiser or Vengeance sound packs, and I could be wrong, but I don't think that they have a lot of the unique sounds that I would use, like steel drums. I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong. The only reason why I say that is this. Vengeance and Sennheiser and a lot of companies like them, they seek to capture the general commercial sound of a genre. Okay? So if you want to make dubstep, you got it right here for $81. You're done. You're good. You can make dubstep. What you probably won't find in this pack is signature sounds that separate you, like I kind of teach in this academy, like steel drums for me, Rasta vocal samples for me. That's when you're going to start to need to think about either buying other unique sample packs, getting yourself a subscription to Loop Cloud or Splice where you can pick and choose different samples, or getting yourself something like Nexus or Serum where a lot of those more unique sounds are made and sold to you because they're designed or sampled already within that synthesizer. So to make a long story short and to cap this, sample packs like this are what will give you your overall sound. If you want to make dubstep, it can be yours for $81. If you want to make unique sounding dubstep that is your own, this will be your meat and potatoes. Okay? This is still going to be the major backbone and muscles of your project. But what you will decorate the main sound with to make it your own will be unique sounds that you handpick from Splice, Loop Cloud, Nexus, Serum, Spire, Silent, Massive, because you made them yourself or you found them available in unique sound packs. Like for me, I look at a lot of Caribbean, Moombahton, dancehall, reggae, stuff like that. So I use this kind of stuff as my backbone, but I decorate it with my own unique sounds. So really good little way to bypass frustration, and this is what the pros are doing, guys. So don't get upset because every single thing you did wasn't hand designed by you. That's not the point. The point is to finish a damn track. So give yourself every option available. Like I said, I started off with samples because I had a terrible laptop. I'm not going to name the name because I don't want to get in trouble or anything, but it was a very very common laptop that was not made for music production. So I had to use samples because I had no CPU on that damn laptop. I couldn't use a synthesizer and all the processing power that it took up. But I was able to make great tracks right away without the use of a synthesizer at all. And my friends were like, dude, how do you make such good tracks? What are you using? Little did they know they're over there fooling with Massive and Serum and endlessly tweaking and endlessly trying to get good sounds. I paid $81. I had good sounds right off the bat. Everything I needed. Effects, uh, up and down lifting effects, cymbals, kicks, claps, bass lines, leads, even some vocal chops. I mean, I had it all, and I didn't even use a synthesizer. I was barely tweaking any knobs, and because a lot of this stuff is already processed, I really didn't even have to mix a whole lot. I didn't have to dig in and become an expert mixing engineer either. So don't don't underestimate the idea of sample packs. A lot of people go to Splice and they handpick, or LoopCloud, and they handpick, like cherry pick different samples from different packs, and then wonder why when they put it all together it doesn't sound good, because you didn't buy from the same pack, guys. They're, Vengeance, Essential Dubstep, all of it's pretty much going to go together because it was all handpicked and grouped by Vengeance. You do that on Splice or LoopCloud and it doesn't sound good because you picked from 30 different packs and you wonder why it doesn't sound great. So take all that, put it together, do some sampling, process those samples through a sampler. You don't need a synth, you don't need a ton of plugins, or process your stems. That way you have a way to produce on the go with low CPU usage, and or buy some sample packs and get yourself going quicker. I hope that helps you guys. I'll see you in the next video.